Tom, it's a pleasure to have you on. One of the reasons why I invited you to our podcast is I was impressed with the way that you kind of manage your pharmacy and your community outreach. So I'd love to kind of dive in and share with our listeners a little bit about your pharmacy, your journey into independent pharmacy, and we'll start there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. As Jason mentioned, my name is Tom DePietro. I'm owner of DePietro's Pharmacy in Dunmore. Many people know Scranton. Scranton, Pennsylvania is the city we border up to. Opened the pharmacy 12 years ago. Out of school, I worked at a chain pharmacy for about a year, worked my way up, started to manage a 24/7 operation. And I found myself one day in the drive-through trying to get a customer's credit card unstuck from the tube. And I remember going home that night thinking, like, what am I doing? Like, I went to pharmacy school and I'm out there trying to get a credit card unstuck from a tube. Like, what is going on? So I remember calling my dad saying, like, I'm going to go back to school for something else. He's like, what? You just graduated pharmacy school. What do you mean? It was at that time I just kind of looked at different options. So after that, I worked at a large pharmaceutical company. They hired 100 community pharmacists to go out and kind of just build relationships at stores. And our goal was to increase adherence around maintenance inhaler. The maintenance inhaler at the time, the refill rate was like 3 months out of 12. Our goal was to, get people compliant, take their medication properly, and have a better outcome. So it was at that time I would go into pharmacies, engage with the pharmacist, and they would just say, like, Tom, listen, I get it. Like, I know the importance of it, but I just don't have the time. I don't have they don't give me enough help. They don't give me enough resources to talk to the patients. So that job to me, it was a rewarding job, but I just didn't feel like I was using my pharmacy education. And then I was like, wait, like, so no one's talking to patients? Like, we're pharmacists. How is nobody, all of these stores I'm walking into, nobody's talking to patients? So then it was at that point where I was like, all right, well, I tried chain pharmacy. I tried an unconventional role. The last thing I need to get out of my system before I totally pivot to a different industry is trying my own pharmacy. So against the advice of many of the pharmacy owners I ran into in my previous role, I decided to open the pharmacy in 2012. So 12 years into it, it's a very rewarding career, but the frustrations of the industry today are, the only gray spots, I guess I could say.
Yeah. No, great story. I love that. I love the story of the credit card getting stuck, and it was that pivotal moment. I know Amit has the drive-through. He's worked in retail. Amit, I'd love for you to share kind of your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. It's great to meet you. I was laughing because I still do that, by the way. Just kidding. But I think they're different. It's interesting. I feel like we go to independent pharmacy and to get away from certain things, but then also you see it again. But at the same time, you have control over it, right? I think that's a big difference. You can decide how you want to pull that credit card out of that too, right? You do it
Right.
but no, it's great. I mean, it's a great story. I've been in for 25 years, and I don't think there's been a day that has gone by where there hasn't been challenges over the past 25 years. And like you said, Tom, it's part of the business, but you just get better at, life doesn't get easier. I think feel like you just get better and you just become a problem solver, right? Jason, that's kind of what we talked about. And
Yeah.
that's the nature of, I feel like that's the nature of any business. But yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah. Well, Tom, one of the things that I noticed as well is you're very active in the community, right? And even in like, working with committees and trying to talk about, legislation and all those things. So maybe share a little bit about like how you've gone above and beyond outside of the normal traditional pharmacists, because a lot of pharmacies are not going out and doing what you're doing. And I thought that was very admirable of like, you're on the front lines trying to make a change. So I'd love
Yeah.
for you to share
Yeah.
more
So,
about
I
that.
mean, early on in business, I found like the community would look to us to participate in, maybe events on the weekends or sponsoring a little league team, sponsoring, a youth soccer team. Last night we gave an award out for a high school scholarship. So it's those types of things that early on I was introduced to as a pharmacy owner. And to be quite honest, I didn't expect that stuff to happen. But as it was coming in, it just felt very natural to participate and give back. And then what I noticed is like that really inspired me and pushed me to make my business more successful because I love the idea of being entrenched in the community, participate in the community. I noticed like by us being involved, they would reciprocate by, patronizing us as their pharmacy. But that wasn't the initial reason I did it. It was just really a good feeling, and it kind of motivated me to say like, hey, not only do I need to earn to keep my lights on and to pay my staff and to feed my family, but like there's a community that's going to rely on us as healthcare providers. And, especially as an independent pharmacy, I know Amit could tell you, like, if our job was to just dispense medications to patients, it would be the easiest job in the world. But we have patients who, they lose their health insurance. They come in and ask what they could do. The drug requires a prior authorization. They've already been on it. Now what do we do? They can't get in touch with their doctor. It's a holiday weekend. They're out of blood pressure medicines. What do they do? And then unhealth care related stuff. So like patients like, hey, I'm going to be short on my mortgage payment. I won't have money for my medicine. Is it okay if I owe you on my medicine? Of course, pay your mortgage. So it's those types of interactions that sets community pharmacy apart. And it's, for the longest time, I just thought like, hey, that's just what we do. We don't need to talk about it. But then when as reimbursement completely continues to go down, and pharmacies are closing, I was like, wait a minute, like we need to start talking about what we do, and we need to make sure everybody knows what we do, because when we go away, and I said this yesterday to a reporter, like when Main Street died because all of these big box pharmacies all of these big box stores knocked out Main Street. Now we look at like government programs that are trying to rebuild Main Street, and rebuilding Main Street is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. So I'm saying like, look, you need to save us now, because if you allow these insurance company to donkey punch us all out, you're gonna, and I promise you, you're gonna try to find a program down the road to get us back, but it's going to be too hard to rebuild. So my advocacy efforts lead me to, call state representatives, our federal senator, our congressman, and these conversations that they're all the same. I hate to say it, but it's like 5 years of the same conversation. And to me, it's hard for them to wrap their minds around, because me, even as a business owner that owns a pharmacy, I don't think like some of this stuff could be legal. So when you're explaining it to someone else, they're like, this can't be. Is he really telling me the truth? And then one of the comments I made in the policy committee hearing last week was, many elected officials will say, Tom, you're the only one calling and telling us this stuff. And I said, well, we protect our patients from the financial aspect of it. So they're not going to call because, Mrs. Smith comes in, pays her $5 copay, leaves with her insulin. She was very happy with our service. She went home, used the insulin. So the transaction was smooth, but on the back end, Mrs. Smith doesn't know that we lost $20 to fill her insulin. So that's the challenge, is how do we get our story out there? How do we advocate for our profession? And then the scary thing is how do you prepare for the retaliation that you're going to get from the PBMs? Because I'll tell you, it comes. The louder you are, the more audits you see. But it was at that point in time last week where I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to lose my freedom of speech over advocating for my profession. And if I have to deal with more audits, I'll deal with it. So that's a little bit about how I got involved in my community. Advocating is just something I naturally believe pharmacists need to do. The one thing that was talked about at the policy committee hearing, there was probably 5 state representatives, and they all knew their pharmacist by name, and they all supported an independent pharmacy. So, I mean, you cannot replicate that. There's no value you could place on that. They knew their pharmacist's name right off the top of their head, and they spoke about it in their testimony. So I don't know where the disconnect is. That's the frustrating part, is we've been preaching that, something bad is going to happen. And, locally, we've had 2 pharmacies close in the past 2 weeks. So it's just, it's not good. It's not a good state of the industry.
Yeah, man, we feel your praise, and we hear like your voice loud and clear. I know Amit and I have had this conversation, and he's sent text messages and we've had this conversation. Amit, I'd love for you to share, like, as another independent pharmacy, like, your voice and your opinion. Like, obviously he's out there advocating, so what's your take on that, Amit?
Yeah, thank you. So, Tom, we're in a small town of about 20,000 individuals, and I'm surrounded by basically 6 other pharmacies, 4 chains within 3 miles. And I hear this honestly every day for the past 25 years. I cannot ever imagine going to Walmart or Walgreens. They won't pick up the phone calls. They won't do anything for me. We service a lot of these, probably half the town's population. And just to hear the stories that I know all about, I haven't personally worked in a retail pharmacy chain as a pharmacist, but in general, I'm close enough in proximity to know exactly the way they do business. It's the way they treat people or just patients. It's awful. And to ever think that we would not be accessible for these patients, it would break my heart. Like, I just look at these, you know, and Tom, doing this for 25 years, and I every day I walk in the pharmacy and I think, geez, the service that we provide for these patients, like you said, a lot of times, we don't get paid for this stuff. We don't get paid. I don't get paid to spend a half an hour with a patient whose son just passed away. We're there. We're there for them. We talk. We're more than a pharmacy. You're more than a pharmacist, and it's just mind-boggling to me to see these pharmacies that are shutting down now, and what is lost in the community. And that's what it is, right? That community loses that pharmacy. It's just hard. It's hard to imagine, right? So
Yeah,
that I think.
and to your point, like, we have a medication organization program where we manage over 700 patients monthly, organizing their medications. The pharmacy that closed a mile away, they were much smaller footprint, but we've onboarded 70 patients in the past week or 2 weeks who are going to be out of medicine on a Friday because the previous pharmacy did indeed organize their medicine for them. The chain that bought them out won't do it. So now we're trying to intake all of these patients and get their medication sorted. Many people that aren't in our industry would be like, wow, Tom, isn't that great that you got all these new customers and that pharmacy went out of business? I said, no, it's not, because that's the problem with healthcare today. There's this consolidation of services where it's instead of having the option of go to 5 different hospitals or 5 different pharmacies, you're forced to one. So I liken it to, like, I'm a big Penn State football fan. They fit 110,000 people in that stadium every Saturday. Well, if you go to Penn State now and say, hey, we got 100,000 more fans for you, that's great. But how are you going to get them into the stadium? You don't have seats for them. You don't have enough workers for them. You don't have enough resources to take care of 100,000 more people. So you see healthcare is slowly, the standard of care has been declining because of the consolidation of services. And, just seeing these patients struggle, they didn't know their medicines names because their pharmacist knew their medication names. Their pharmacist knew what they took at noon. Their pharmacist knew what they took at bedtime. We're new to this patient. So, of course, there's going to be a couple hiccups, but Lord, no one is ever going to take 800 patients of mine and be able to offer the services we do. But I won't be able to do it if we don't get paid. Like, we cannot provide a service to a patient when we're not getting paid. And then you have the fixed expenses of the current economic environment of, like, our utility bills are through the roof. Payroll is higher because of, wage compressions. So, we have all of these fixed expenses, but the problem with our industry is then we have fixed revenue as well. So when I explain this industry to friends that own other businesses, they're like, why would you do this? Like, I won't touch a job unless I'm making 20%. I'm like, we would be out of business if that was our mentality. We're making a quarter, $2, $3, or losing 40. They're like, what? You lose 40? Yeah, we lose $40. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
So obviously you're out there advocating, with legislation committees, et cetera. What can other independent pharmacies do in their local communities to help rise up and to vocalize
Yeah,
further?
man, I would say this: if you are a pharmacy owner and your state rep doesn't know you by name, or you don't have your state rep's phone number, in your cell phone, you're not advocating for our profession. You need to build relationships at your state reps offices. They need to know the services you provide. They need to be able to personally call you and say, "Hey, Tom, this bill came across my desk. What do you think about it?" You need to be able to call them, and not only just to complain, but like, they're a resource for your customers too. So like when COVID ended and we lost like a lot of the customers lost medical assistance, they couldn't get through. So it was our state reps that got our patients through that door. So I would say if you don't have a built-in relationship with your state, I mean, I get federal is hard because a lot of times you just hit walls and you just get their staff and their staff constantly turns over. But man, your state reps, you should definitely have them in your phone and they should have your number on their phone. And send them letters like, "Hey, here's current industry. These drugs are on shortage." You might get a lot of phone calls about, patients having a difficult time filling their stimulant medications or filling their diabetic medications, and they appreciate that. So it's more than just picking up the phone to yell and scream and to complain, because who wants to hear that, right? Nobody just wants to pick up the phone all the time and say like, "Hit up another complaint's coming in from the pharmacy friend of yours." So they want to hear about the industry and uh, how it aligns to what their offices are trying to do when they're providing the constituent services that they do on a daily basis.
Yeah, great points. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Tom, I always want to like paint the other side of the picture too, right? Like, so obviously you've brought on 70 new customers in the last week, right? What are you doing to kind of like think about the future, right? Because obviously you're not you're not throwing in the towel, you're not saying, "Hey, we're done yet." Like, what's kind of your focal point to create more growth, to identify areas of profitability for you in your business?
Yeah, and Jason, that's a great question because I talked to a pharmacy owner yesterday. He's in the same position. He had a nearby pharmacy close, and he said, "Tom, look, the pharmacy that is like a couple blocks away is closing, and I really don't. I'm afraid to advertise because I'm afraid that if I advertise, I'm gonna get patients that I'm gonna lose money on, right?" So I said, "Man, this is such a disheartening thing because I know he's not the first pharmacist that told me that, and he's definitely not the last pharmacist that said that." I think we have a lot of owners that are just like so apprehensive that they don't know what the right thing to do is, right? So like I often say, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So our patients, unfortunately, are old, right? They're north of 65 years old, and the unfortunate reality is many of them pass away. Some we service for 6 months and we get to know them, and then they pass away. So you definitely need to backfill. And if you're not backfilling or you're afraid to backfill, I think now is your opportunity to sell because you need to have script volume to get a tangible number for your business. So if you're just gonna like kind of sit in the corner and suck your thumb and hope things get better, you're in the wrong profession. Maybe a different profession that would work. My vision is, somebody early on told me this advice, and they said, "Tom, do what other do what other businesses of yours, like do what your competitors won't do." Okay, so I'll repeat it. Do what your competitors will not do. So I know our medication management, our pill boxes, that is our bread and butter. So it currently represents like 40% of our script volume, 40% of our business. It creates a stickiness with our community and our customers. Like many people think like all pharmacies are the same, right? And who's to blame them? Because you walk into a chain A and chain B, it's more of the same. You walk all the way to the back of the store. The store's a mess. It takes 10 minutes to get back there. You get greeted by a 18-year-old high school student who asks if you have any questions for the pharmacist. You get your prescription and you leave. Like that to me is not healthcare, right? But our customers in our community think that because that's what they see at A and B. That's
Mhm.
probably what happens at Tom's Pharmacy or Amit's Pharmacy. So it's our job to tell them that, hey, that is not how we operate. So we're currently using the tagline, "Not all pharmacies are the same," and we'll show you why. So I think medication management, helping people solve their problems, right? So anybody could put pills in a bottle. Um, but how could you solve the pain points of your customers? And when you get to listen to your customers and hear their pain points, man, managing medications is difficult. I take 2 vitamins in the morning, uh, and 2 prescription medications, 4 medications. my unfortunate thing, I'll be the first one to tell you, I leave my medicine at the pharmacy. So on Saturdays and Sundays when I'm not here, I was historically not taking my medication on the weekend. And then at like 2 months later, I realized like, wow, it's only 2 days a week, but then that's 8 days a month, and then that's 24 days. So you realize like just in a quarter of the year, you could miss a month's worth of your medication just by missing 2 days. So the importance of taking your medication, and the challenges are there. So, problem solving for your community, problem solving for your customers is what you should be focused on. So, most communities are the same, but obviously they represent unique challenges. Some areas may have, a different cultural backgrounds. Some people might have a different socioeconomic status. So maybe less public transportation. So you need, only the owner will know what their community is composed of, and trying to solve the problems for them. But the other thing to answer that, Jason, is like we had offered historically free delivery and free medication management.
Mhm.
And I was like, man, like we're kind of cornered into offering this because other independents near me that were open 20 years prior to me offered it. That's why I offered it to begin with. But I'm
Mhm.
looking at like the cost for me to put a pill box together all in is $26. The cost for me to deliver to a home is $8. So we recently introduced a small fee to offset it. So our delivery is $3 a delivery. Obviously, it doesn't cover the $8. The pill box is $5. Obviously, it doesn't cover the 26, but I think over time, it's my belief that the community and like just society in general, they're going to be looking for a unique experience for a better healthcare experience. And I think us charging for our services, I was very uncomfortable doing it, and it took me 3 years. But I think we're going to see some sort of opportunity to charge for the services that we do because the patients can't get them elsewhere, and nobody could do what we do. And I'm confident in that.
Yeah, yeah. The times are changing. You got to shift and be innovative in your pharmacy. And I know that's a lot of what Amit has been doing as well in his. Like, Amit, I'd love for you to chime in. I know we've got a few more minutes before we bring on our next guest. Tom, you've been amazing so far. We could spend hours talking with you about this topic,
Yeah.
but I'd love to have Amit's thought on this process.
Yeah, Tom, we do the exact same thing actually. We started with free delivery and then realized quickly it became a lot. So, but what we did though is exact same model as you. Now we I think we do one free delivery and then we charge same amount. But what we've done is we've given that free delivery and they love the service. They love the service so much they're willing to pay an extra few bucks for it because nobody else is doing it. So that's 100% the model. I think also just niching in, like I have a passion of nutrition and mental health. So we've started now selling digital courses online for our patients talking about nutrition and mental health. And I think that's something that separates us because Tom, you said it well. It's when you're good at something, you're worth it. And it took me a long time to be able to say that. Why should I come to your pharmacy? Because we're worth it. You're not going to get the experience and the service that we're going to provide for you. We're going to talk nutrition. We're going to talk mental health. Relationship between gut and your brain. All these different things that are important to patients, and you can kind of figure out what's important to them, and you focus on that. So I think just really the importance is, and Tom mentioned this, is diving in into something, niching in, and being good at it. And I think, is where you build your confidence to know, like, we're worth it. We're not like anybody else. We have patients ask us all the time, why should I come to you? Why shouldn't I go to Walmart? I said, if you want the Walmart experience, go right ahead. Go to Walmart. You're not going to get
Yeah.
that experience here. I could not say that before, right? I feel like I had to sell myself, like, okay, we do medication management. We're not, all this stuff. But if I go, you know what? You get what you pay for. And you're getting 10 times the value. Like for me and Tom, I'm sure the same way. Where would you get your prescriptions? I wouldn't step foot into a chain. Are you kidding me? Like I would find the independent pharmacy in my town, get to know the pharmacist by first name, and come in, and I'd be a patient there. So if I would do it, I would do the same thing for my pharmacy. So
Yeah, great
Yeah, and
points.
admit, like I give you so much credit. That's such a novel idea about the online courses. That's great. And I would just say this, like I said it very confidently that I charge $3 and charge for the med box, and you said the same thing. But I'll tell you, like uh, the other thing I said this week many of times is everybody, no matter how successful you are, everyone is still just trying to figure it out. Me included, Amit included. It took me years to introduce a delivery fee. My wife, every December, I would pull this like draft out of this fee, and she's like, "Oh my God, are you looking at that delivery fee letter again? This is the third year you're talking about potentially charging for a delivery. Like, will you either do it or not?" So like I get it. It is not easy to make these decisions, but once you overcome the decision, right? Like once you switch a wholesaler once, or once you let go your first full-time employee, or create your first digital course, you get comfortable. So like please don't watch this and be like, oh my God, they have it all figured out, because no one does. I don't care who you are. Everyone is still just trying to get by and trying to, make tomorrow come.
And
Yeah.
I should say this too on a side note, Tom, and going along with what you're saying, I had a patient this week. She was being charged because we had gone out there multiple times, and she goes, "I'm not paying the delivery fee." I go, "Okay, no problem." So all of a sudden, my whole thing about charging $5, all of a sudden, I'm also in that way. I should be careful what I say, but also soft in that respect. Where look, I understand. I'm not, if you can't pay the fee, I understand. We're gonna work with you, but it's not.
Yes.
I don't have that part figured out. Honestly,
No, and admit to your point, that was my staff's big concern. And I said, okay, guys, like if we waive the fee, we waive the fee. Like that's fine. Like work with the customer. We're here to service them. And if somebody's eating that humble pie and they're calling you, saying, like I love your service. I really can't afford the fee. It's not in my budget. Okay, that's fine. We'll still take care of you. And that's what we're here for. So, everything is not set in stone, right? Like it's not a history book. You gotta go with the flow. Make the tough decision, and they are tough decisions, right? But you
Yeah.
got to make the tough decision for your business. You have to make the tough decisions for your staff, because they're relying on you to deliver them a paycheck, and your family at home, and then obviously your customers. You got to make these hard decisions for them so you're around. But yeah, I mean, like there's been times where I have this idea, and then a week into it, it's like, yeah, that's it's not really working out as I imagined. Just scrap it. And that's the beauty of independent pharmacy, because we're the ones calling that shot, right? We're not waiting for somebody in a different state to call and say, hey, you didn't call 20 patients today. How come? I didn't have time. Like they don't like that excuse. So yeah, I mean, it's just you gotta be nimble enough to work around it.
Tom, I've
love
got
it.
a recommendation for your staff next time they come into that objection. You say, hey, no problem. We'd love to work with you, but is there anyone you can refer to us to offset that fee that we're losing from not charging our delivery?
There you go.
There you go.
And
Right?
if you don't ask, Jason, I learned in life, you'll never get it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about innovating, right? We got to continue to evolve as humans, and our processes have to evolve, and our team members have to evolve to help support us to create that profit and growth in our
And when
pharmacy.
we do it together like this as a profession, and as colleagues that, we've never met each other, but as if you do it like this, it's just naturally fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I got one more question for you, Tom, because again, we could spend hours on this, and you've been awesome. I feel like we're fast friends here, but tell me one thing, and tell our listeners one thing. What are you doing to focus on growth and innovation in this next couple of months? Like, is there a specific drug or product or program that you're focusing on and you're kind of doubling down?
Um, I don't, I know it's probably like a short wave. We have introduced compounded GLP that we're sourcing from a 503B facility. Man, I'll tell you what, like the conversations from the community. So most of the calls are from like non-current customers. Most of the calls from providers, or providers that we know. But man, talk about like the ability to like really know um, about the topic, communicate it to patients. They're really so thankful of it, so grateful. Like the words that come out of their mouths is like, I got a text message this morning. They said like, Tom, I'm so grateful you started to offer this service. And I was reluctant. So I'm very scared to dip into anything. So as most pharmacy owners are, if it's not cut and dry to me, it's like, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. So, after I really took the time and invested the time to research and educate myself on it, this opportunity has been great. It just feels good if the customers are coming in, the thanking you, the providers are calling you, thanking you. Like, Tom, we're inundated with these calls. We can't find the drugs. Like, thank you for offering this. Now it's going to be short, right? The runway is not going to be there forever, but the relationships will. And then those relationships, I think, will just, continue to evolve for the next, I don't want to say it, but like, God forbid, if there's a next pandemic, they're going to think of us for their booster shot, or, if they were discharged from the hospital on 10 medicines, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that pharmacy that I went to, they offer that service. Let me see if they offer that, help for this. So, I think it's a good opportunity to build those relationships, but long term, I mean, my vision is, if you're not managing medications for your customers, I do think eventually, like, mail order is just going to be the solution that's going to be pushed on most of the community.
Yeah, great points. Well, Tom, you've been amazing. Tell our listeners how they can learn more about you, your website address, and where you're
Yeah,
located.
we try to keep our Facebook very active. I feel like that, that's the best way to keep just like brand awareness. So if you're not managing your own Facebook, find a social champion in your pharmacy to do it, because man, do I hate seeing those cookie cutter fake graphics on Facebooks. So yeah, DePietro's Pharmacy is our Facebook, and then obviously our website, DePietro'sPharmacy.com. We try to keep that as current as possible as well. And if you have any questions, you could certainly, find my email on our website. I love meeting other pharmacy owners. And it's always a mutual conversation, even though it may start off as like a non-mutual, maybe I'm calling someone for advice on a specific thing, but they'll reciprocate, and I'll offer the same advice back. So, we have to be in this together, because man, the days are tough, and the weeks fly by.